call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Med Irrigation District Board of Directors. Would you all join me with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Division 1.
Here.
Division 2.
Here.
Division 3. Here. Division 4. Here. Division 5.
Here. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll take public comment on any item not on today's agenda. If you would like to speak to items pertinent to NID business, start on your phone or come to the podium at this time for items not on the agenda. Seeing none. Okay, I see none. All right, consent agenda. I have a motion for the consent agenda.
Laura has some.
I'd like to pull items 3A, C, and F, or E, I'm sorry.
3A,
3C, and 3E.
3A, 3C, and 3 what?
E.
E. Okay.
Okay, Mr. President, I would move then to approve items 3B, 3D, and 3F on the consent agenda.
Second. Second. Is there any public comment on these three items on the consent agenda? Right, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Division 4.
Aye.
Division 1.
Yes.
Division 5.
Yes.
Division 3.
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Okay, Laura, item 3A.
3A. Okay, 3A is the minutes of the September 28th meeting, and I'd like to make note on page 121, or page 3, under policy 3080, that the board asked Director Peters to provide her comments written, and so I want to get that in. So just, that was one of the key action items from that policy, that item. I remember that.
Okay.
That was my as amended.
Want to approve?
I motion as amended to note that Director Peters will be getting written comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any public comment on this item? Item 3A, correction to the minutes. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Division 4.
Aye.
Division 1.
Yes.
Division 5.
Yes.
Division 3. Aye. Division 2.
Aye. Okay, Director Peters, 3C.
Okay, 3C, I think that on 3C, on the employee training policy 2175, 2175.2, I think there should be a cap on the GM authority, where it would be above $4,000 or $5,000, it should come to the board for approval, rather than carte blanche. If it's over $3,000, it's at the GM's discretion. Out for discussion.
I would tend to agree too, that there should be some kind of cap at over that limit, which would go.
Yeah, it would be consistent with what was the budget, what was approved in the budget, and then also with the procurement policy.
And then could you remind us then how the procurement policy and this intersect?
So it would be subject to the limits in the procurement policy.
But which are what?
So currently, it's 100,000. The draft policy, lowers that limitation for the general manager to 50,000.
Right.
I've never seen a training in my entire career that's up over, all inclusive, even a really expensive training, inclusive of travel, would be maybe 10.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add, this was kind of the rationale for changing that whole bottom bullet on 2175.2, was to take the flexibility and give it to the staff in order to move.
I remember
If you recall,
our discussion.
yeah, one of the real purposes of this training amendment for this policy was in the hydroelectric department. There are trainings that come through with PG&E on a moment's notice, and these guys have to make a determination to go immediately, and it doesn't fall within a time period where we can get to the board, put an agenda item together. Sometimes that's 3 to 4 weeks out, and those trainings are then changed, or they're fully subscribed to. And so this was the whole purpose of getting out of the authorization of the board completely, but staying within budgetary constraints that are within each department. And we wouldn't go over those, clearly, without prior board approval, but that was the whole purpose, is to make the staff nimble enough to make it.
I remember that discussion on this.
Do we see a training plan for the district? In other words, so we're gonna have so many, so much is allocated for hydro,
That's included in the operating budget, so you'll see the training, basically trainings, conferences, and meals for each operating department. And usually, they run about $15,000 to $20,000 per year per department, so that's for everybody included. Hydro does tend to be a little bit more expensive because of the PG&E cost of trainings, and that one's usually maybe $35,000, $40,000. There's several trainings, for example, in water operations, and in hydro, where they are required to do so much annual training to keep their certificate.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Right. Let me add one quick thing, Karen. So in our groups last night, one of our strategic priorities is employee satisfaction and so on. And we had a really good discussion around the employee training. And what our group came up with, Nathan's here, was that we were going to make a goal to task each department manager with coming up with an actual training plan, and I'm hearing maybe that actually is already happening. But anyway, a training plan that they would submit and say, okay, so that primarily for the employees, so they know, oh, these are my options, this is what I have to look forward to, and so on. So we saw that as an important piece.
It wouldn't be realistic to have an expectation of having an annual training plan. Many of the trainings are not established or set a year in advance. And so, as they come up, we'll have an idea of, some of the continuing education courses that are required, but we don't necessarily know when or who is going to be providing them in time to be able to prepare an annual.
Well, and I don't think, Mesa, you could help me remember, but I don't think we were saying annual, but that they would be tasked with providing the plan so that primarily so there would be clarity for the employees to see that they were going to have access to training, whether it be yearly or every 3 years, whatever that was going to be. So, that kind of ties into this discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's two different levels of training, right? There's operational and OSHA training that we provide staff on an annual and biannual basis, whatever the OSHA regulatory environment requires of us. There's fall protection training, there's hazmat training, there's other district trainings that we provide staff ongoing that is not part of this process. These specialty trainings really revolve around individual specific department needs, and particular classification training that a staff or a department would want our staff to go to and attend. And so sometimes it's really hard for, I'm going to pick on the hydro department because in particular this has been a real thorn in hydro's side, because of these trainings that come up from PG&E in particular around a very specialized aspect of a plant. And sometimes those are not known in advance. Sometimes they come up. We try to get as much information in advance, but sometimes we don't. And I'm not, so versed on the water operations side of the training program, and if there's training schedules that we could follow and have in advance and sign up for, but this particular change in the policy is to act on trainings quickly, and sometimes they're not known until they come out on a list of.
In the grand scheme of the percentage of the annual budget, any of the training budgets are, this is an extremely nominal budget item, and frankly, a decision point. If the board would like additional control, I don't believe that it's warranted based off of the cost of the decision. And in fact, usually what actually ends up happening is we don't ever spend our training budget. It's more on the opposite side of the scale.
Director Johansson.
Yeah, I agree with that. As directors, we have oversight on the budget.
Right.
If management needs the flexibility to work within that budget, and if they're out of that budget, they come back to us. I mean, it's very simple. You have to be efficient, you have to be productive. Coming back to us is neither one of those. We're just getting in the way of management doing their job. So, I like the way it's written.
Director Peters.
Okay. In my 20 years of state service, every year when we did our, annual reviews or individual development plans that we had to prepare, we always had to prepare. And like you mentioned, there are two types of trainings, and the standard trainings that are required for certification, that's all standard training. But I always had staff, and I always had to, for every year we did it, we prepared an individual plan. Where do we want to, what kind of training do we think would help us in the next year? That's the kind of training I'm talking about. So there is other kinds of training, and it was always at state level, it's done every year with your review. And you just look to the next year and how can I do better? So if
We don't not do that. That actually does occur during the annual review process. The issue is that we don't know when any particular training is going to be provided or noticed.
I put it on my staff to find the training that they.
But I think that the point is still being, maybe I'm not articulating it very clearly.
I concur with you. If it's all within, I'm all good. I just wanted to have the discussion. I just wanted to put it out there.
So like,
So I'm fine with it, but we should know, people should be able to know this year, this is the training I want to see to improve my job.
And we generally do that. We just don't have titles or costs or locations of that training typically.
And I think that request is outside of this policy.
Yeah.
That's more of what we were talking about last night. If you want to add that to strategic goal settings, then that's a different system,
yeah.
as opposed to this policy.
Right.
So with Laura's permission, I move to,
Oh, I do have a comment like that too. On, section 2175.2, the sentence I don't think is correct. It says, expenses incurred by an employee that has been approved. So the English is not correct. So it should be incurred by an employee that have been approved.
Correct? Yeah,
okay,
that is correct.
So that's,
thank you. So with that change,
yes.
I move to approve 3C, District Policy 2175.
Second, okay. Is there any public comment on this item, 3C, employee training? Yeah. Starting on your phone. I'm looking at the wrong, I'm looking at it. Okay. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Division 4? Aye. Division 1?
Oh, yes, sorry. I was trying to fix my screen. Sorry,
Division
everyone.
5?
Yes.
Division 3? Aye. Division 2?
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, Director Peters, 3E.
3E. Where's Rich McConnehey? So learn about him. He worked here 17 years.
He is a gentleman that is actually out of the plaster yard, and so he's been, unfortunately, had experienced an injury related to a workers' comp issue, so he is also eligible for retirement right now. So he has requested to start processing his retirement.
Oh, okay. So but you usually do a little retirement thing. Okay. Maybe today or something. We didn't get, usually retirements, they come in. Not available. Okay, well, good. What was his role? What did he do?
You know what, I'm not clear. I don't believe he's actually been working since I've been here. Yeah. Steve, do you know? I think it's in vegetation.
Yes.
Oh, so I have it wrong. He wasn't
Yes,
plaster, he's in
his
vegetation.
position was vegetation control worker under maintenance, for the past few years. Unfortunately, he was injured, and he's been off for about, just over a year, prior to his retirement.
Oh, okay, thank you. Congratulations to Rich McConnehey. Yes. I move that we approve 3.
Second.
Second, is there any public comment on this item, resolution of appreciation? On your phone? Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Okay, general orders. 4A, grant application, U.S. Forest Service collaboration with Upper Middle Yuba Watershed.
Okay, that's a long one.
That's why I'm trying
And
to read it.
because it's so long, I'll bring NEPA up
Okay.
to help identify what we've got going on. So this is an exciting, morning for, NEPA and her staff, and talking about what we can do up in the upper watershed, including, we've been talking for a long time about partnerships with other organizations. We've been talking a long time about the 70,000 acres of upper watershed that NID's source watersheds come from. Talking a long time about the fact that NID owns a small percentage of lands within the overall watershed itself. How can we continue to, you know, assume that we're doing the best possible thing for the watersheds in which our source watersheds come from? How can we continue to make sure that our partners and our neighbors are also helping out in the overall concept of watershed health? And so NEPA and her team have been working on this concept of, well, a couple things. One is an MSA, a Master Stewardship Agreement with the Forest Service. That's coming in the future, along with a larger forest management plan. We'll be talking about some of those things later on. But this particular identification are 2 items. The first one is to assist in a NEPA document, which is the federal equivalent of CEQA, and helping the Forest Service really do the environmental work that needs to be done in advance of the implementation of forest health practices. So I'll let maybe NEPA add some clarity and some color to this. It is something that it's over a 3,000 acre area, which is the whole entirety of the upper middle fork of the Yuba watershed.
That we're going to work on.
That we're
The
gonna work on.
entirety is larger, so.
Yeah.
So it's roughly an 18,000 acre area that the Forest Service is going to assess and prioritize treatments within. The NEPA document would address 3,000 of the highest priority acres within that zone. We will work collaboratively with them as they go through their own decision-making process. They use different tools to evaluate at the landscape scale. And I guess to back it up a step or 3, what we're trying to do, as Greg mentioned, is work across land ownership boundaries to work at the watershed scale. So this is the Middle Yuba Headwaters, this is above Jackson Meadows Reservoir, and the rest of our system. There was a map attached to this proposal where we tried to clarify relevance to our water storage reservoirs, the Milton Bowman Tunnel, other pieces that are critical to our water system, so that the concept is we're working above in the headwaters area where when the rain and snow fall and run off through the watershed, this is where it lands before it comes downstream. This area also has seen incredibly high recreational levels in the last 5 years, shall we say, certainly in the last 3. So the Forest Service is very aware of and concerned with recreational impacts, as are we.
Can you describe what those impacts are?
Impacts include, for us, first and foremost, potential to ignite a fire. We are very concerned with a lot of this area. Some of it is campground, some of it is what we call dispersed camping, and some of it is just folks out in the woods. And so where you have people, you get fire ignition. Many folks are camping, they have campfires. There's all kinds of off-road vehicle use. There are impacts to the roadways, impacts to these areas where when you combine, from our perspective here at the district, I think this elevated level of human activity with very dense forests and very, the last really 80 years of forest management and fire suppression up there in many of these areas has led to very dense standing forests, as well as the accumulation of dead and down material. So you've got a ton of what people call tinder, so the ignition potential's high, and then these fires would be, the catastrophic fire risk is also very high. That, Director Johansson, did that?
Yeah, it kind of leads into the Forest Service wanting more of that during the FERC. It's not part of this conversation, but they want us to develop more of that access for people in the higher country, and yet that access is destroying the upper country.
Yeah, for sure, to a degree, I think. I mean, you've got, the only, I mean, NID owns campgrounds, and so I think what you're referring to is not dispersed camping so much, but specific campground amenities. A little different, I'm not sure if it's,
Right.
you know, in addition to. One of the things that I wanted to point out in the map is you can see the different checkerboard process. Checkerboard.
Oh, yeah.
So this, if you recall the checkerboard process within this whole Sierra Nevada area. The green is Forest Service land, light is private lands. More often than not, it's Sierra Pacific Industries. And then the blue shaded areas are NID-owned areas. That's sort of the, give you an overview of the map.
So and I think important to recognize is that whether or not, how to put it, well, whether or not folks are invited, they come up there.
Right, exactly.
And there's pretty consistent, access. Everyone has off-road vehicles now, and people just come. There's flocks of people up there, shall we say.
And what percentage of them don't pay?
Yeah, and I don't know.
A lot, right?
Yeah.
A lot of those. And I'm not arguing against that, I'm just saying that is a reality of the forest. And who doesn't want to go up?
And it's happening throughout the West. This isn't specific to this watershed. It is happening up and down the Sierra Nevada and up into the Cascades.
So there's a book out that tells you where you can disperse camp.
Yeah.
I mean, roadsides.
Well, and online, I mean, social media, people have read it, so, and recreation is one piece of it. The other piece, that's a squirrely, difficult to manage piece. The other piece is we understand fires, they need ignition, fuel, and oxygen. We're gonna work on the fuel piece, because the ignition concern is around human presence. The fuels, by working at the fuels level and thinning the forest and managing the forest, will maintain healthier forests into the future. We will see a change, hopefully, in the amount of water that flows through these systems. Trees like water, and so you see with all the current research and then decades of just experience up in these Headwaters regions, you know, Dr. Bales and Roger Bales and Martha Conklin have done these paired watershed studies, where by standing at the watershed level, you can get as much as 10% or more water return, water coming back in.
Pretty remarkable.
So we also have in these upper elevations above 5,000 and 6,000 feet, that's where the snow arrives. By thinning on these slopes, you get more snow on the ground, you get shading from the overstory canopy. That's all beneficial from a hydrologic perspective. We're also protecting terrestrial and aquatic habitats, because these really high fire events are very impactful, and it takes a very long time. So what we're trying to do with this proposal is to look at the Middle Yuba River Headwaters area. That includes English Meadow, that we'll be working in next summer. And we're gonna work with our partners at the Forest Service to complete the environmental compliance piece, the NEPA planning process. We would ask, essentially as a fiscal sponsor, to obtain the grant and do contracting. They will provide the technical support to write the scopes of work for their consulting needs. We would meet them by helping to facilitate that piece, and then they're gonna take the project through this planning process all the way to their decision memo, which is the final piece.
NID receives an administrative fee from this?
I
so there's a small administrative fee. We do have budgeted in-kind, amounts of about $23,000 to help with certain aspects. Forest Service has in-kind, amounts budgeted in. So in total, it's about a $733,000 project, once NEPA is all said and done. And so, that's,
Who's the lead agency for this NEPA?
Forest Service?
Forest Service.
NEPA lead.
Since, NID's involved, it doesn't have to be like a NEPA CEQA combined document or anything, there's no CEQA involved, because we're just supporting their work, is that correct?
Yes.
So there's no work done on NID properties per se.
this is extremely unique
Yeah,
in
that-
the way of environmental permitting to go. To our knowledge, and Sierra Nevada Conservancy's knowledge, there's not been an entity such as the Nevada Irrigation District who's approached the Forest Service. We've asked them, we are this watershed is extremely important to our systems. And it is on a list of Forest Service lands, 1 million acres long, that says, yeah, we need to go and do work here, but we first got to do the NEPA. And so our conversation with the Forest Service has been, okay, well, if you can help us get over the NEPA hurdle, then this area becomes more of a priority for our implementation efforts. So that's our push.
I'm kudos, like 100%.
And it accelerates it through that process, and
Yes, I'm 100% for it. What would be the timing? So if the NEPA final decision memo comes out next year, then the work would be actually happening next.
well, then we need the money to do the work.
Oh.
So the Forest Service has its own budget, they have access to different, funding sources as well, and so we would then start looking for, additional funding. If magically the timber market opens, the Forest Service can do timber sales and things, and that can help to, so the implementation piece is not sorted out.
Right.
This is the environmental compliance piece.
Yeah, and honestly, there's no guarantee. We can't guarantee, and we can't push the Forest Service to do. However, all we can do is get over this hurdle with the NEPA. It's there, it's now it can easily rise to the priority level within the federal government system.
You have to have these steps before you
Gotta have
get
this.
to the implementation. I just think it's an excellent example of the kind of work that we want to all do. Collaborate creatively, innovatively with all of our partners. And thank you.
Walking
And
the
your
walk.
staff. Yeah, walking the walk.
I motion we adopt resolution 2022-02.
I have a question. So on the budget piece, the 23,000 in kind for NID is the only, staff or fiscal impact, is that correct?
So the grant request is for $500,000 for the Forest Service's consulting and contractual tasks. We can access up to $60,000. What we do with grants is set up our own tracking system. So when our financial staff is tracking and invoicing and doing all the things you have to do and that we always do with our grants, they can code their time that way. So that level of, in terms of financial impact to the district, that's a reimbursable cost for direct expenses associated with grant administration and contracting. So that's up to $60,000. And then the $23,000 is over this roughly 2-year period where we want to participate, basically as you can.
Meetings.
Yes,
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Group
It's all
discussions.
staff time, it's all
Mostly staff time.
staff time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But that's the reimbursable, and then the unreimbursable is the approximately 23,000.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to comment, it was ironic that I opened the packet last night and read this proposal that we were struggling in our committee to how to define, how to write in there, how to word the collaborative part. And we know if we're moving that direction, but that was really exciting to see this.
Yeah.
We talked about it in our committee. so.
Yeah, good work.
Yeah.
And it's everyone, truly, it's not everyone, I mean, we're all working on this, and this was as much Forest Service's idea as ours, where they really recognize the condition of the watersheds, and what we're doing. Greg pointed out this patchwork, landscape. A lot of those light shaded parcels that are often Sierra Pacific, they've already been thinned or logged, they're managing their forest differently. So it's not, and this was part of a site visit we took, where we took Sierra Nevada Conservancy staff up about 2 weeks ago, because they needed to get a sense, this is a huge landscape, as these maps are really misleading. It's quite large up there, thousands of acres. Why would they just find a piece here or a piece there? And you go up and you can see, as you go from one land ownership to the next, the change in forest density, forest condition, which all translates also to wildfire risk. So we're weaving together to create a landscape of treatment and managed forests.
What was our opportunity, speaking of that, because Ricky and I were talking about before the meeting started, about density and on those private lands, how, are they being managed in a better way than at this point, are they, and are there densities, what am I trying to say? What are our opportunities to work together with those people?
With SPI, so the next item that we will discuss is our proposal for 400 acres of work on the ground. We're working with SPI to get access, which they're completely open to helping. So there is partnership there, there's willingness to collaborate at levels.
Well, and there's different goals for each
Absolutely.
private, public entity, right? And so, you know, our goal is not necessarily always the same as a privately held corporation. Hopefully we get to the same end goal over time.
Mr. Peters.
Is SPI participating in this NEPA study as well, since they have some land in this area? I know that they've been very partnering with PCWA. And
Not
are they
not
participating?
Not
that
on
I'm
this
aware
one.
of, maybe at the public process and review level,
Okay.
but I don't know yet. So the red outline gives you the total area to be considered. There will be a subset of those acres that are taken through the NEPA process.
so it
So
wouldn't
it's
be
not the full
the-
18,000 acres.
The red area is the 18,000,
Correct.
right? And we're talking work on roughly 3,000 of that total 18,000. And a lot of that has to do with slope, density, you know, granite outcroppings that we're just not gonna touch on. So it has to do a lot with that, and that's gonna come with some of the discussions that we're gonna have with the Forest Service when we look at mapping technology, LiDAR, and different things, where we're gonna be able to see, okay, this parcel over here is high prone, let's focus this. And it might be a patchwork at the end of the day, but looking at it from a watershed level, it is contiguous.
Yeah, Chris?
Richard Johansson.
Yeah, and that patchwork was developed by the railroad. You have to deal with it. So about 20-some years ago, I was on a commission with one of SBI's foresters. I came away just amazed of how knowledgeable, how sensitive, they knew what they were doing, how they wanted to, you know, decrease the density, make it more fire safe. They were on it long before, and it was maybe a government agency that was holding some of it back, but it's good now to see everybody's getting on the same page, because I think you'll find some of those privately held lands are managed better.
Yeah, I know that on the King Fire when it happened in Middle Fork. I was right there. I've heard there. Yeah. Well. I move.
Make a motion? You
I
make a
motion that we accept that resolution 2022-53, authorizing the application for grant funds for the 2022 Wildfire Recovery and Forest Resilience Directed Grant Program of the Sierra Nevada Conservancy for the Upper Middle Yuba Watershed Forest Restoration Project.
Second.
Is there any, public comment on this item? Start on your phone, grant application? None? Any further board discussion? Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye, thank you. Okay, next.
Next one.
Next
Thank you,
one.
NEPA,
Thank
and
you,
team
NEPA.
NEPA.
I think it's worth noting the partnership that the Sierra Nevada Conservancy has with the Nevada Irrigation District over the last 6 or 7 years. They have been an incredible funding partner for us. their grant applications, their processes are streamlined, their staff is readily on call and willing to go up with us. Went up to the area just a couple weeks ago and take a look and really try to understand the breadth of what it is that we have been trying to do over the last 6 or 7 years. And they're really, you know, they're wanting to fund NID in a lot of these projects. They have a grant application program that's due the 28th. And so that's why we're here for both of these resolutions. Any application that goes forth to them must have this resolution of application, and so that's why these are here. Some entities don't necessarily require a particular resolution just to do an application. They might require a resolution once we receive the funds in order to get it. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and their willingness and their expressed interest to work with us over all these years. The next item is for an application for $1.4 million to actually do implementation of thinning and hazard tree removal and forestry work within 400 acres of NID-owned lands. The back page of the staff report gives you an overview of that area. These, in the previous map, are sections in blue around Jackson Meadows Reservoir. The bottom lower right corner, that's our English Meadow area, and that's the other Wildlife Conservation Fund board-funded program that we've got going on right now. So it continues to tie all these things. So the other areas you can see here in the hash marks are NID's properties around Jackson Meadows, around Milton Reservoir, and then, what one's that?
That's Austin.
Austin Meadows.
Yep.
You know what, let me just interrupt. So none of the folks online, if there are any, can see these maps. I noticed last.
It's on the,
They're in the
it's
packet.
in the packet.
Well, I can see them, but normally don't we post them up?
Not necessarily unless you
Share
do a
screen or
presentation.
something?
They can be accessed through the agenda packet that's available on our website.
True, I knew that. I just wondered if.
Yeah,
There's also,
we didn't get
yeah,
to the
there's-
presentation.
we have no public attendees this study.
We have none?
No.
Okay.
Trevor.
Yeah.
Trevor's got it. Are you looking at the online?
Good.
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
Well done. Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted
Yeah, no.
to clarify
Yeah,
that.
you're right, and often we'll have a presentation. We just didn't get around to getting a presentation for this.
But once again, this is fabulous. Thank you.
So this is an exciting proposal. This is implementation. This is for work on the ground. And it's similar to taking the model that we've employed at Scotts Flat Reservoir and bringing it up to the upper elevations to address wildfire risk and catastrophic kind of high-intensity burns. To thin the forest, we're looking at the understory, small diameter trees, the understory that would take a ground fire up into the canopy. We're looking at the accumulated dead and down wood. That's why we've included a couple of photos there to give you a sense of the density within this packet. Sorry to jump around for the online folks. There's an Austin Meadows and a Wood Camp campground photo. That gives you a sense. A lot of the Austin Meadows stuff is lodgepole pine. The trees have popped up over the last 30, 40 years. There's a lot of tree mortality up there. A lot of it associated with a really dense forest stand. And then the climate stressors that the forests are seeing with the drought, with the water and temperature specific stress. They're not able to fight off insects. They're not able to do the normal processing of forest fungus and things that are up there. So we're seeing elevated tree mortality, pockets of trees that have died from beetle infestation, you name it. So we want to go in, and on 400 acres, we have roughly 560 acres up in this area that is owned by NID. As Greg explained, due to the actual landscape conditions like granite outcroppings or water courses that you always protect and you put a buffer on, we want to do the entire 560. We'll do 400 of those acres. We'll use mastication and hand crews to go in. We will, where we can, bring masticators in first due to access and slope to grind up this understory layer from 0 to 12-inch diameter. We will also treat dead and down material. We will also use hand crews that can do the same with a track chipper that they walk in. Those are areas that are harder to access or rockier conditions. The ideal would be then, where possible, we can even get from that 12 to maybe 20-inch size class. Some of these areas have dense stands of, say, white fir, other species that are common in the high elevation areas, that if we thin them out, the keep trees, that forest stand that we want, that would be a mixed species, mixed age forest community. It'll be stronger, it'll have less resource competition. So we've got a few different treatment methods in our kind of toolbox to go up there. We've requested sufficient funding to have between $3,500 to $5,000 per acre to do this work. It's tough in terms of access, and so because the access is hard and it's at high elevation, so we know we have a short work season every year, we expect to do 400 acres over 4 years. We will be the lead for CEQA compliance. CAL FIRE will be the lead. We will obtain CAL FIRE exemption for this work, which means we meet all of the prescribed practices, all of the protections that are in place, which is, again, similar to how we worked at Scotts Flat Reservoir. It's a streamlined process, it's effective, it works well. And then what we will do is go into these areas, as you can see on the map, and treat, that's the wrong map, and treat the district-owned parcels that include Aspen Group Campground, the south side of the Milton Reservoir, along, I think it's called Graniteville Road or Meadow Lake Road, or it's called different things, but you see that little zone adjacent to Jackson Meadows Reservoir on the west side? Down by Wood Camp Campground, which is again adjacent to Jackson Meadows Reservoir. Then if you go slightly to the southwest, you've got a half section that's Austin Meadows. I'm really excited to see how Austin Meadows looks, because as you can tell from the photo, it's incredibly dense, but it's a beautiful meadow environment that had a creek flowing through it even 2 weeks ago. So where you see meadows and you manage the encroaching lodgepole pine and the other conifers, when you manage the trees back, you get more water flowing, you get these beautiful aspen communities, great aquatic and terrestrial habitat.
We'll have to take you up there.
Is that,
Yeah.
So, any questions?
been that for 4 years.
With the chainsaw?
Is that here?
Hand crew.
Yes.
We can go as a hand crew.
Yeah.
Any
And then-
questions?
yeah.
I had just one question. Is this map, the resolution says 400 acres, but the map that NID proposed treatment is 550 acres.
So we will do 400 acres of work. We will have the budget to do 400 acres of work.
Oh,
Within
those
that
550
landscape.
acres. This is again fantastic.
Yes, sir. Good. Promotional period for ranchers and farmers. This almost looks like the land when we moved to Penn Valley, what it looked like. And it took us years to just move that low, mid-story, wood right up until it's fire safe. We couldn't even see through, the trees. It was that dark and blank and just, so I guess if this is a project, this definitely needs to be done and replicated. Sierra Nevada Conservancy, a lot of work is going on in the upper areas, but it goes down to what, 500 feet?
Oh, their boundary line?
The whole conservancy area?
Yeah, well, they're fun. They've given us a grant to work within the River Fire Burn Scar as well.
Yeah.
So they certainly are down into the mid and low elevation.
So remember, we were advocating in Sacramento for the conservancy. It was gonna be stopped at 1,500 feet or something, and there was a big push from farmers, ranchers, and get it down to 500. So I'd like, if we could check and see if it is down to 500, there's work down there we could do also, I think.
Yeah, they have a map on their website that tells the boundary line. It's pretty simple.
So the grant that I've been working with, and Greg and Nace did a step in, for City of Nevada City.
Yeah.
That goes down the Deer Creek.
To Bithany Springs.
Well, it doesn't go all the way that work area is substantially slow. It doesn't go all the way this round, but that's their end goal.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know what that elevation is there. It's
Just above us,
Yeah,
No, 800.
where we are right now.
yeah. Is it even down in the canyon? I was thinking.
Well,
it's lower.
Wildwood is like about 1,300 or so.
Yeah. Anyway, it's, the Conservancy is part of that grant
Good.
as well.
Any other questions?
She gets two.
But thank you for the great work. We really appreciate that, and your team. It does, one of the observations, though, is that you're doing work on 400 acres, and the second proposal, the first proposal is 3,000. So it gives you an order of magnitude of the cost of doing that treatment on that 3,000.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
And that's the part of the goal, we didn't know how to write that in our thing yesterday. This is great.
Justin, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious about this Austin Meadows location. You've got, if I'm reading the map correctly, you have a ridge or something that black line.
I think that's a
So you've
road,
got-
is the black line a road, or, oh, that's South Yuba
That's
River?
South Yuba
versus
Watershed,
middle.
yeah. So part of that parcel, precipitation would then enter into Jackson Meadows. The other portion of the parcel would go into the South Fork Yuba Watershed. Yeah, so the question is the hand crew area. Why is that hand crew? Is that where the creek is? And that you have to,
I think you're talking about.
So your hand crew is so the lavender, there's a lot of little waterways in there. And so you don't put heavy equipment with tractors in there, you bring a hand crew in.
and those waterways are heading to Jackson Meadows, or are they heading to what looks like Jackson Creek and Bowman?
So it would, if this is a ridge line, if you got the South Yuba, Middle Yuba, it looks like they would flow to the north.
They're way in Jackson.
Yep,
Okay.
come down here, so Mud Lake is actually
Hard to tell right
obvious.
there. What, you can tell a little bit by the.
It's hard to see with the
Yeah.
contour lines,
contour lines,
but, yeah.
What are the blue lines with the blue dots on them, and what are the blue dots indicate?
Usually they're classes. There's a class 1, 2, and 3 creek
Okay,
or tributary, and so they're basically how perennial or intermittent
okay.
are these systems. One dot is a 1, usually you put 2 that have the 1 dots together to become a 2 dot,
Oh,
which
I
means
see.
they have
Okay.
more flow, it's kind of an additive.
Good. Good discussion.
I have a motion, I can make the motion.
Okay.
I would do.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Public has comments, I always forget that.
So both of these are great, so kudos for doing this. There's a lot of people, especially in South Platte, are hurting financially. $6 gas, talking about at every meeting, impending water increases. I haven't heard anyone here talk about how this saves the subscribers money. So I would just suggest always looking through that lens. How does this help our customer? And if it's saving on, because of fire damage, obviously the environment, improving that is a benefit to everyone anyway. But the optics part of this is difficult when you see millions of dollars, even if it's a lot of grant money. It's hard to explain that to the customer base that it isn't costing, subscriber dollars.
Ratepayer money.
Yeah, ratepayer money. So I would just suggest that always try to have that component into that.
Tie it back to water supply.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just
Water
say,
supply thing.
we're getting $1 million in this grant, we're gonna do this, this would have cost us X amount of dollars, because it needed to be done anyway, that sort of thing. So when and if a rate increase does get put on the table, you could have like a list of, these are the things we try to do to mitigate it as much as possible.
Good suggestion.
Absolutely, yeah. It is all about water security.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Are we ready for a motion? Is there any other public comment?
Is there any other public comments?
I would move please to adopt, Resolution number 2022-54, authorizing the application for grant funds for the 2022 Wildfire Recovery and Forest Resilience Directed Grant Program. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy for the Upper Yuba Headwaters Forest Restoration Project in the amount of $1,420,000.
We had public comment, we had board comment, so we're ready for a vote.
Division
No, we
four?
have a second, did we have a
We
second?
did.
Oh, good, oh, thank you.
Aye. Division one,
Yes.
Division five,
Yes.
Division three. Aye. Division two.
Aye. Thank you, Mesa.
Thank you, board. Everybody, nice work.
All right. Next item is general manager's report.
Thank you, President Beerwagon. I just had a couple of items. I just want to give you a quick update on Hemp Hill construction project.
That was my question.
Yeah, so it's doing great. We did have to notify the agencies, we are gonna need a site extension on the in-water work. And so we're getting pretty close right now. They are currently pouring the outlet structure. And then there is one final, dirt berm that will be removed, and then the coffer dams will be removed. And then after we get out of the water, there will be some ancillary work that'll be completed over the winter as time and weather permit, but we're looking really good.
So what's the schedule? I mean, what time, like a week or, so 7 days to cure the concrete and then another week or 2 weeks?
Probably at least 2
First
weeks,
of November.
yeah.
When would it be appropriate for us to arrange a board tour or a tour for anybody who wants to go see it? Because I've been there so many times, but I'd love to see it now.
I need to.
Well, do you want to see it when it's completed?
Yeah.
Yeah, right now it's still in the middle of construction, so we'll schedule something when it's completed.
Okay.
There's just big equipment in
I
there,
know,
it's hard
I
to,
saw some
yeah.
photographs of it.
Yeah, and we can send some more photographs, it's looking really good. I went out there, not last week, but the week before, and it looks really good.
No fishing poles.
What?
Yeah.
No fishing poles.
Yeah,
Oh,
don't
no.
bring your pole.
Channel 3 had a great article on the Auburn Review
Mhm.
10 days ago.
You know, Channel 3, there's also an article in the Lincoln News Messenger,
Yeah.
so we're getting some, nice publicity from it.
That's good.
Good.
Then I just want to notify the board, I'm sure you were all invited, but if you have not checked your email, you may want to, Nevada County is holding a climate summit up in the Truckee area on the 13th. It's by invite only, so if you're wanting to go ahead and check your email.
Tomorrow or November?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
We just got notified of it on Sunday, I believe. And then, we are still working away on a couple of issues. One is related to our FERC additional information request. So we do have a letter that we need to submit in response to some additional information that is related to the FERC relicensing. And that is due at the end of October, so we're still working on that, and we'll share that when the letter is complete. And then, as I notified the board, PG&E has notified us that they will be, on a statewide basis, selling off many of their generation assets, basically all generation assets except for nuclear power assets. So staff is evaluating that change, and then we'll be reporting back to the board at some point. And we'll also be having a closed session about it.
Is there, theory as to why, is this somehow shield them better from liability from wildfires?
What's motivating them?
Yeah, what is the motivation? I mean,
Yeah, I think it's
that
a
was
couple
my
of things. It's,
initial,
yeah,
like,
shielding
oh.
liability, and then they're going to be able to generate some equity, related. So once they sell off, they form a subsidiary
Yeah, an
for the
LLC.
generation assets, and then they will be selling essentially shares where there will be, the minority owner of the subsidiary will be shareholders, one or more shareholder. And so that will be an opportunity for them to raise equity and then also be able to issue more debt or
Right.
Did you say all assets except nuclear? All
Generation. Generation
I
only.
meant generation.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, with the exclusion of the South Yuba Canal and then one other piece of infrastructure, which I don't recall the name of it.
They actually had the legal notice in the Grand Valley paper yesterday or the day before.
Yeah. So we're carefully evaluating and watching it, and we'll be reporting back.
How does that impact the drum spalding system? Is that considered a generation?
Uh-huh.
It's excluded.
No, only South Yuba Canal is excluded, Drum
Oh, I'm
Spalding,
sorry, I
yeah.
misinterpreted.
Drum Spalding is not excluded,
So it will go to the subsidiary.
that's the plan as of right now.
Deer Creek.
Deer Creek and the Deer Creek Powerhouse was excluded from the subsidiary. So there will be a lot of public proceedings regarding the matter, it does have to be approved by the CPUC, so definitely stay tuned as
A
the
few
public.
years down the road,
Yeah,
probably.
I don't
You
know
don't think
that it
so?
will be a few years, so there'll be a lot of,
Quicker.
yeah, there'll be some action by FERC, for the transition of the ownership and the licensing, and then there is some CPUC action, but they're looking to have it done within, what, was it a year, 2024?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
very aggressive timeline.
Yeah. And then that's it.
Could you give us an update on the audit?
Oh, the audit is doing great, actually, I meant to put that on my list. The audit's doing great, we just got the preliminary audit findings, and, they're not final till we actually get the signed report. But the large finding that was basically multiple findings, that one's pretty much gonna go away. So there's 3 small findings, but they're all related to things we're still fixing. One is recreation cash handling. One was, I don't remember what the other 2 were. We just received the preliminary findings. So we'll be reporting out on that with the auditor, maybe the second meeting in October or the first meeting in November.
The status of the budget workshop.
They're already scheduled, so one was scheduled, one is scheduled currently for October 25th. We're considering moving it to the 26th, so it can be combined. And then the second budget workshop, when was that? November 15th? So what it was, Chris? Yeah, they are already on everybody's calendars. Let me see, I don't have it.
They're on my calendar.
They're on my calendar.
Yeah.
It's not twice.
Well, good. We'll expect to see
I
you.
would just request that where we can, you know, on a day where we have a light meeting like today, that we have them combined, so we're not at Tuesday, Wednesday. So I don't know what the next agenda looks like, but it seems like perhaps we could include and Tuesday budget discussion on Wednesday.
And we're shooting for that, there's a couple of other hefty items, but we'll know for sure with the scheduling within the next, probably by the end of this week.
When will we receive preliminary budget? I mean, are we gonna have more time to look it over before the meeting so we can be prepared?
So the capital budget, will likely, so the first 2 meetings are workshops, and so you'll receive the packets probably the Thursday or Friday before the workshop, and then you'll have a chance to review it, provide input, and then you will have a capital workshop, operating workshop, and then you won't hear the final budget until December.
Right.
So there'll be a lot of time to review it before.
Okay.
But December, we have to adopt, it's adopted in December meeting.
Correct, so it's scheduled for December 14th.
And so if it's after the second workshop, you'll have some time to look at it, but we won't have time to make modifications to it before adopting it.
And that's a typical budget schedule. So the budget workshops are intended to solicit input, and then if you have additional input in between the last budget workshop and the budget hearing, you know, please feel free to provide that input or ask questions.
Very good. Thank you, Jennifer. Board of Directors reports, who would like to go first?
Well, I'll go first. I have a very brief report, but I did, and was able to attend the Governor's Task Force on Wildfire Recovery and Forest Resilience, and it was chaired by Wade Crowfoot, and there was a lot of really informative speakers. I found the whole thing terrific. I was so glad Greg was there, Nathan was there. We had a variety of NID presence, along with all these different collaborators within the watershed, and it was great, and I was really delighted to be there. So it was, everybody got the agenda like the 2 weeks before. I think I was the only board member that made it, but I didn't see anybody else.
Was it in person?
Oh, it was in person, yeah, there was like 500 registered They're great, 500 people.
There was a lot of people there.
Yeah,
And we have sent out the notice several times to the board.
yeah, you did, and it was really a wonderful, informative thing. And one of the things that one of my big takeaways was prescribed burns, is how they seem to be incorporating that as part of their ongoing forest resiliency plan.
Finally.
It's the cheapest and so on and so on, but, anyway, it was just it was interesting to see how big of a role that they were going to use prescribed burns for forest. So, yeah, it was great. That's it for me. Thank you.
I would just build on what Ricky commented on. I had the opportunity to do the site visit at Scotts Flat Reservoir with NASA and
That was
Ray.
the next day.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Kian, and that was just wonderful to see the actual work that had been completed in our watershed around Scotts Flat. It also gave me a perspective of how much more work could be done on the opposite side of the lake in a more challenging environment. And the other thing that I would comment on is the nature of the participants were probably half a dozen people from the state who wanted to see, you know, how grant funding is being used for local projects. So I think some really good relationships were reinforced, and kind of got the idea going of, well, we could do dog and pony shows for people who are in these positions of influence.
That's right.
To try to continue on a kind of a one-on-one basis to build that relationship and funding stream coming in this way. So really, congratulations to everyone for that hard work and great outcome. I, with Ricky, also attended the RWA program on the American River Basin.
Oh, that's right, I forgot about that one.
And I attended the Special District Association training for 2 days in Napa in September, and learned a lot of things. There was quite a bit on managing finances and then bond funding. So one of the things that kind of struck me was this generational equity concept, which is part of our bond funding policy, but I hadn't really thought of it in that term. And they talked about if a project has a sustainable life of 30 to 40, 50 years, that those projects, even if you can fund them, pay as you go, really should be bond funded to make the ratepayers who have the benefit of that project contribute to the cost. And I like that as we think about our investment in our infrastructure, that we're thinking about generational equity as a decision criteria.
I like that term.
Isn't that a nice,
equity?
yeah.
Interesting.
Another thing we talked about is a new legislation that's been passed on the Brown Act and social media, and just make a request to the board that we get, I mean, I don't think it has to be long, it's not very complicated, but I think that some reminders, we're not big social media people, but we could step into a trap of violating the Brown Act by the way we interact with social media among us as board members. Another thing they talked about was the reserve policy, and that got me thinking, we've got an aged reserve policy, and so just want to ping that up on our list of many things to do. And then they had an interesting discussion on contentious board meetings, and showed some video clips that were just, wow, whoo, over the top.
It's like kidding, right?
So anyway, you know, just providing some real practical strategies if you find yourself in that situation. So anyway, it was a very informative and valuable training that I would recommend for folks.
You never did get it, did you, Chris?
And it had a lot of water districts was the predominant
Right.
participant group.
Those were the board meetings that they showed?
No, they were schools, 4 schools and city councils, but, I mean, they're just
Did they happen to indicate whether or not they posted the materials online?
I'm not sure if they
I
did,
can check into that.
yeah. And then I just had, partly with this training, but also secondarily, I wondered when we would be seeing the second quarter financials.
They are basically done. There's one outstanding question that I wanted resolved.
Perfect, thank you. And then I wondered if it might be helpful to take a step back and just briefly revisit the existing bonds we have.
We can do that as part of the annual budgeting process.
Perfect, thank you.
I don't think you and Rich have been a part of that, because we did a whole refinancing, or what do they call it, recasting? Reissuance to bring the interest rate down with the
Yeah.
interest rate. We did that, and then there was a whole thing we did on bonds.
We have 2 bonds right now.
But, yeah, there's only 2, but you guys weren't here for that.
We can definitely,
We were in the
Thank you.
audience.
yeah, we can
Were
bring
you in
that
the
back.
audience?
Yeah. We were advocating for it. The interest rates down.
But I mean, I think understanding where our debt service is and, when we look at infrastructure requirements and funding, I think it would be helpful just to get a refresher on
To
that.
have a continuing education about debt asset ratios.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What we can afford.
You take into consideration your debt asset ratio, but also when we're making a decision regarding funding of future projects, you also, that's when you engage, your investment advisors, because you have to make a calculated investment over time based off of what the debt service costs you versus how much you can essentially make in investment revenue. And so we'll be bringing forward some of those conversations, as it relates to the budget, but also as it relates to some of our more expensive capital projects that will be proposed, not for the 2023 year, but for the 2024 year, for example, Scottsdale Flat Spillway construction in the Chicago Park Rewind. So we will start getting back into bonds and understanding that better.
Like, how do we manage, how do we compare and contrast rate increases versus borrowing money? That whole.
It's all a balance.
It's a balance,
Yeah.
and that's, I
It's almost a
oftentimes
four-corner system.
Right, oftentimes feel out of balance.
Yeah, you have investment revenue, you have to
Right.
pay the debt service,
Right.
and then there's the consideration of the ratepayers.
Like buying a car, how much can you afford?
Yeah, well, what's the payment gonna be, right? That's
Yeah.
all they care.
Interest rate, bingo.
Right. Thank you, Director Hall. Director
It's a
Peters?
four-corner.
Okay, yes, I've met with a couple constituents this past couple weeks, and I'm planning to, on Saturday, I'll be interviewed for the Hill movie.
Oh, that's great.
Movies, I'm gonna be in the movie, I'm excited about that. And, also next week, on the 20th, I'm scheduled to go to the Aqua Region 3 Mountain Counties, event up in Murphy. But thinking about it, it's all the general managers and the staffing of all of those water districts up there, and I would gladly give my ticket to one of you two. I offer that up. I think it would be more beneficial to attend that, and you would get much more out of it.
We'll check into it, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. So I have no report, except it's pumpkin patch full on. So come on out.
Yeah, so I guess my report would be, I'm interested to see what this generational equity looks like. In our family, it's like grandparents kind of set it up for the parent, their kids, the kids set it up for me, I set it up for my kid. You just kind of keep building on what someone has built on. I mean, my first gut feeling was, gee, they just found a new way to, future debt on the future generations, by justifying it that, they're participating in the benefits, why shouldn't they pay for part of it? But I mean, going forward, I see we've loaded up our kids with so much debt in this nation that it's gonna be a hard sell for me. I mean,
Well, it's like our hydro facilities though, right?
understood that, understand there's a return on investment there also, so I'm really gonna look at return on investment, how much we have to put out, how much it doesn't really mean to the district. And hydro has meant so much to the district and to our customers. So I'm just putting that out. Okay, irrigation season ends Friday, Saturday.
Yep.
Chip, can't you see I've got all going?
Shoulder season.
I tried.
Tomorrow, there will be like 500 ranchers and farmers down here. Yeah, but, so I guess I'm kind of looking at maybe what an 8-month irrigation season look like. I think we're gonna have to at least look at it and factor it in a little bit, because ranchers like that lose seed. That rain brought up quite a bit of seed and growth, and now it's gone. Unless they could have irrigated it, but now if they stop irrigating on the 15th and we don't get rain until November something, they're gonna lose that, and that's quite costly. So it's not easy to go to, extend the season beyond 6 months. Down in the valley, water transfers in October 31st. So a lot of people who don't have wells, and they have a stretch if they have a dry winter. So it's kind of looking interesting. Then tomorrow night, Karen, Chip, Steve will be in the audience. That's nice.
Where are you going?
Lake Wildwood. Update, basically the Ricky.
It's another installment of the roadshow.
Roadshow.
Oh.
So it's no longer,
Updated roadshow, yeah.
so it's no longer Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. We change. But anyway, I got the Lake Wildwood option and Alana's report and master plan from 2017. But that's antiquated. So, yeah, it's gonna be basically what you got, Ricky and Karen gave, and with, focus in on Lake Wildwood and updates.
Makes sense.
What is going on with Lake Wildwood treatment plant?
Good question.
Pardon? What's going on with the
Lake Wildwood treatment plant.
We just finished an internal evaluation regarding potential alternatives for the BEP as well as the plant, and we'll probably likely bring something in the November, December timeframe to the board.
Too
for
early,
discussion.
or too late for tomorrow. For them.
Yeah, I don't believe that we are prepared to speak about it in public regarding the alternatives until we receive some input from the board.
Yeah.
Something just came to my mind. I know that the AHO hearing was last week. What was the outcome of that? Can you give us?
I had sent an email regarding the status about the hearing. So essentially, the hearing officer will be issuing an order regarding a schedule, as well as requested briefing on whether or not South Sutter's petition for waiver should go forward prior to any hearing related to NID's pending application.
I forgot in my report, I also attended that, and I was texting Jennifer, what does this mean?
It was as expected.
So is it going to a hearing or is it not going to a hearing?
That hasn't been
It has
determined.
not been determined yet.
Oh,
There-
that's what she's gonna determine.
She requested briefings from each of the parties related to whether or not it should go to hearing and kind of the procedural issues that surround it. Dustin might have the different.
Currently, the two water right applications are partnered combined. And what the hearing officer is considering and what she would like briefing on is whether to separate the two, allow South Sutter's petition to proceed to hearing in advance of any potential NID hearing. So,
Their 40,000.
their petition for release of priority, yes.
Dustin, one thing I didn't understand, I understood the brief part, the two parties are gonna submit briefs, but are the interveners, are they also gonna be invited? Are they also gonna be submitting some kind of brief along?
Yes, well, there was some dialogue about that, because, as Andy McClure was mentioning, the playing field has not necessarily been set, so to speak, for, South Sutter Water District's pending application. So, the way I believe it was left with the hearing officers, that everybody will have opportunity to brief.
That's kind of what I was thinking, I thought, oh boy, that's a lot of,
Yeah, a lot of decision making.
well, a lot of briefs, a lot of work for all these, especially the NGOs, when, they probably all have a similar perspective.
They'll band together, yeah.
You
I
think
did-
they'll band
Yeah,
together?
they'll band together and they'll submit joint briefs and Me-Too letters and those types of things.
Yes.
How do we respond to a letter that had innuendos and facts, 10% fact? I mean, there was a letter I wrote that I didn't recognize.
You read?
Yeah, I read, excuse me, I didn't write. That,
You wrote it, I
You
read
wrote
it.
a protest letter,
I didn't even recognize it.
Didn't know what he was talking about.
I was asleep when I wrote it, I couldn't help myself.
That's right. But how do we respond to,
We just stick to the facts. In
Yeah,
any
I
type
mean-
of hearing of this nature, there's a lot of ancillary issues that get thrown into the pot. It's pretty normal.
yeah?
When are the briefs due, when's the next hearing?
She's going to issue an order.
We haven't seen the order.
So we haven't seen that yet. The discussion was around the 1st of September. There would be kind of December.
Right.
So the 1st of December, thereabouts, would be kind of an opening brief by all the parties. And then there would be an opportunity for what's called a reply brief response by all the parties that would be shorter, sometime shortly before Christmas. That's what was discussed, but we have not seen the written order setting the schedule just yet.
We're busy, I'm gonna go back. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Anything else, anybody? Okay, at this time, we will take public comment on items to be considered in the closed session. If you'd like to comment, start on your phone or from the podium.
President, I do not, two items. I do not anticipate any reportable action coming out of closed session. Second, I just noticed a typo on item 8A. That is my mistake, my apology. It should be Pacific Gas and Electric Company, not COP-Many.
Cop many, okay.
Many.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. All right. With that, we will, close the open session, open the closed session. Thank you for attending. For the break.